Hello and welcome back to Snack Breaks, the new Whovian podcast with me, Bentigo Blue, the new Whovian. Today we are going to be discussing Doctor Who Season 2, Episode 3, The Well. We are going to be discussing this in spoilerific detail, so please, if you have not yet watched the episode and you do plan to, please click off this video now. Maybe give us a like because you appreciate the fact that we warned you. Anyway, right, let's get into it. Before that though, I know I said I'd get into it, but I was just looking through my files for the podcast. Yes, I have everything very neatly organised. And I realised that from a video I made, from a podcast I made last summer, I've got a Webiper saved to my computer of Sutekh, but it's not spelt, I believe Sutekh, Sutekh. It's spelt Suetech. Like a granny trying to use a computer. Sutekh. Not so scary anymore, is it? Anyway, Doctor Who, The Well. So, the way we kicked off this week's episode was very, very nice. I'm really appreciating this season, the way that there has been a consecutive flow between episodes. Certainly reminds me of a lot of the stuff Disney would be doing with Marvel, particularly really gave me Loki vibes for some reason. It's been a while since I've watched Loki, so perhaps they do break that flow of going directly from episode to episode. But from memory, they do. It's pretty serialized. You are hopping from the end of one episode to the start of the next. And that was a really slightly surprising thing about this one. I admittedly had not been expecting it to happen, so as I was watching it I maybe didn't love it that much, just because it was like, oh, we're here again, nice. But on reflection, a very, very good thing, and something that's definitely going to help out streaming. Then to Britney Spears' Toxic, which is just such a 15th Doctor song, and absolutely wonderful, absolutely amazing decision there. Belinda and the Doctor go on through the TARDIS for the third time in this era of the show into their new costumes, and it's the spaceship thing. And I've seen some people, spacesuit thing, sorry. And I've seen some people question how exactly that works and how it knew what they were supposed to get into. The TARDIS can translate languages. I'm just going to presume it's TARDIS-y, WARDIS-y fun. And then they are dumped in quite a high-intensity action sequence. They are dumped off the spaceship and down onto the planet, which I think a lot of us originally thought was a water planet. And it sort of still looked like a water planet as we watched it, but I don't believe it was. It sort of was a water planet. Anyway, that doesn't matter that much. We'll talk about the specificities of said planet a bit later. But anyway, that looked very, very good. Title roles, absolutely great. Important to note that this is the first episode of this season not to be written solely by Russell T. Davies. It was written by Sharma Angel Wolfall, was the co-writer of this episode, which is really interesting. I'd love to know how much input exactly she had into that, but regardless, yeah, it was a very well written episode. I think it's no spoiler to say. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Anyway, they immediately turn their guns onto the Doctor, and we get, once again, the use of the psychic paper. It's the sort of thing that doesn't get used an excessive amount in Doctor Who nowadays, but I really like that sort of thing. Again, it's a fun little nerdy thing, and it's just, yeah, it's nice. I love the use of the psychic paper, always appreciate that, and sonic screwdriver as well. All that type of thing is, yeah, very, very nice to see. So anyway, there's immediately that tension within the group, and that's something that I think really was set up really well in this episode, and the way in which that plays out, obviously, is so interconnected to the plot twist that this turns out to be. So then we get in, and it reveals itself to be our classic base under siege episode, and I do think it's really interesting, and I'm sort of hopping around a little bit here, but I was watching yesterday the Confused Adipost's review of this episode, and he pointed out this is almost so far a much better opening season for a new era of Doctor Who, if that makes sense. As much as I really enjoyed season one, I do think season one was much more enjoyable, a much more enjoyable season for Doctor Who fans as opposed to the general public. You've got some funny, goofy, wacky things that Doctor Who fans can just go, oh, space babies. It's like, it's Doctor Who, we can get a bit of fun stuff in there. And then you have references, the main villain of the season being something from the 60s. You're hardly selling the brand new era there. And then 2 very Doctor Light episodes. And I really like 73 Yards in particular, but it's not quite what you want to be selling your new era. Whereas so far this season, it's Confused Outpost was pointing out, and I'm sort of reiterating this just because I think it's such an interesting point. You gain all your classic types of episodes in there. RTD, companion introduction, your god type thing, which I know is more of a commonality now that maybe was a while ago, but you've got a return villain, that's always exciting. And then Base Under Siege. It has been so long since we've done an episode like that, or it certainly feels like it's been so long. And I have to say, I don't really mind the fact that there's been a lack of, oh no, something has gone mysterious and wrong in a spaceship, castle, future castle, something in the future, space station, that sort of thing. As much as I really like some of those episodes, some of them I don't like so much. Some of them are not my favourite episodes. Some of them. And the ones I don't like are sometimes controversial opinions, but yeah. Personally, not a massive fan of some of those. So, glad to see it making a really good return this time, actually. And the way they go into the place, and you can immediately, once again, see the dynamic of this exploration group. And you've got the broken mirrors, and you've got the half of them shot, half of them stabbed. That's a really good mystery, and the way that's set up, that is the sort of thing I want at the start of if you're going for a dramatic Doctor Who episode, yes, please. That's the sort of stuff I really, really like. Then, in addition to that, we have something a bit more minor, but I really enjoyed. It is the Doctor calling, I can't remember his name, but he was very good. The corporal type guy, and he says to him, "Oh, babes," and he says, "It is not appropriate for you to call me babes," and he says, "Okay, hon," and it's one of those things that just applies so well to the 15th Doctor, and it will sound very awkward coming from a lot of other characters, but the 15th Doctor just nails it with such it really amazes me, just the personality that Ncuti Gatwa imbues into the 15th Doctor and does so much with. Really, very good stuff. Really like that. Then we meet Rose Ayling-Ellis, who is making her Doctor Who debut in this episode and is really, really good. I have to say her performance was certainly a real standout. She was a guest to the show, or guest actor that was teased quite a bit in the future, and I was certainly excited about for quite a while. And I sort of only remembered a few minutes into the show, oh, this is the Rose Ayling-Ellis episode, let's go. That's good, and she certainly did not disappoint. Have to say, some of the writing regarding, how people were speaking to Rose's character, I can't exactly remember her name. I realize everybody's forgetting her name, I'm sorry, but I can't remember her name. But the point is, I wasn't entirely sure how I felt about some of the writing regarding how they were talking to her. I presume I felt like they were talking to her in a slightly childish way, although she was a really panicked character, and I think that was more the sense of reassurance that was coming from a lot of the characters as opposed to anything else. The Doctor knowing sign language, again, is just such a lovely detail. That idea, again, of the Doctor just being such a kind and compassionate character in so many ways is something that, as much as I love the exploration of the Doctor wouldn't be the Doctor without those elements. And, even spoiler for series or the Capaldi era here, but even, like one of the perhaps most typically known as sort of grumpy, or the word is escaping my mind at the moment, but doctors with the coldest exteriors, it could be said. Peter Capaldi's Doctor takes Davros as a child and, can't bring himself to kill him. He attempts to, prevent what happens. I'm binging the old stuff, okay? I mean, I know that's semi-recent, but I believe that is roughly what happens. And that compassion of the Doctor was just a very nice element that shone through once again. And that is something that, again, is really apparent later in the episode again. Right, then after that, things begin to get spicy. The Doctor, beyond the initial sort of tension once again of, how can we trust Rose's character? Is that okay? Can we be trusting her? And the very different approaches that characters are taking here, that almost precedes the entirety of what becomes the main debate of this episode in many ways. We then find out, get the realization that don't panic, but nobody knows what Earth is. And these very obviously humans do not know what humans are. And the response they get is almost, you can feel the terror and frustration, just the way, and I thought this was a really well acted scene, and this character was incredibly well acted the whole way through, but the crew member who Belinda Chandler speaks to, and they're talking, and they're talking about, oh, she doesn't know any of the future nursing equipment, and she doesn't know any of the future nursing equipment, and the fact that she sort of just says, "Oh, what now?" when Belinda mentions humanity, it is such you can imagine just how frustrating and totally terrifying that would be. So I thought that was really, really good. And then after that, the grand plot twist. Woohoo! I was well on board the theory of this was going to be a Waters of Mars sequel. So that's sort of why I went into it. Really love Waters of Mars. Great episode. It was not a Waters of Mars sequel. It is then revealed that this is not a Waters of Mars sequel, but in an amazing realization scene where we're talking about the diamonds and the well and all that great stuff, it is actually a sequel to an episode I would actually consider even better than the Waters of Mars. Midnight. A sequel to Midnight in the year 2025. That is not what I was expecting, but I am all here for it. Very, very good stuff. So, yeah, the way that was revealed was just so good, and the immediate panic in the Doctor. I know some people would argue that, and I would at times argue that the 15th Doctor sort of overreacts to things sometimes. But, I can appreciate, though, that he's very in touch with his emotions. That's certainly something I like about the 15th Doctor, but perhaps I do think sometimes that, there's some situations where, okay, by having him crying every episode, you're taking away some of the value in his, in the emotional side of this Doctor. But certainly the way in which he realised and the panic that the 15th Doctor so expertly conveyed in this episode was, really, really good. Loved that. In the well, that was just such good stuff. Then there's a really excellent sequence in which, I can't remember if it comes before this, the bit we were just talking about, or after, but the Doctor, Belinda keeps thinking she's seeing something around Rose, and it's, just really great. Really, really like that. And just sort of the connections to paranoia that are expertly strung throughout this episode. It's just so well done, and the discussions of sort of the panic that Rose is conveying here, it's just really great. The acting all around this episode is, I feel like I'm complimenting every single actor's performance here without giving any of their names, but that's just because it is all so good. Such amazing performances. Then after that, the Doctor gets back and the debate begins. This is really quite, I've seen described as a bloodbath, and that is it, except there was no blood because it's Doctor Who and we've got to keep it family friendly, just how I like it. That is good. It was pretty intense stuff. I didn't really feel the need to see a gory version of that. I'm fine, thanks. So, suddenly the midnight realization is made. You've got the midnight clock face, which I am slightly confused as to how an alien species is going, yes, the human clock face. That's a thing. but they are apparently, so that's okay. We'll go with that. And things get really serious. And this was definitely the best part of the episode for me. There is an amazing there is an amazing tension there that runs throughout this episode. And it's only heightened by what Midnight did best, and it's once again is a real highlight of this sequel to Midnight. It is the terror of Midnight comes not in the fact that the alien or whatever being Midnight is can adapt and has that ruthless need for survival and that the ability to do what it does. It's the fact that it turns everyone on each other, and the Doctor is almost sent powerless in, when faced with, without getting too deep here, when faced with the horrors and the worst sides of humanity. It's really scary stuff, and that was something that was once again amazingly handled in this episode, and that just such a brilliant sequence. I keep saying it, but it's really good. Everybody's sort of panicking, everybody's trying to move, everybody's trying to escape. You see these highly trained astronauts just panicking. Some try and run out and, they're flown through the air and killed almost instantaneously. It's, really, really intense, but made even more intense by the fact that it is almost brought on by themselves. Rose is doing very little here. She is helpless in this situation. And they're moving, they're trying to panic. They're the ones almost killing each other. And then in the end, the lead commander takes out sort of the other commander who briefly sort of forms an uprising and causes this whole thing to go into total panic. And you can almost see you've got the two. It's the two, admittedly, and it raised. There's the two ones who are doing things for the right reason, but going about it very badly. We could see it's very badly, regardless of opinion. It doesn't end up well for them. The ones who only want to follow protocol, if you will. It shows that it only takes two to go down the wrong path, to sort of send everything unfurling terribly, and even just make things really awful for those who actually have very little to do with it. Like, there's some in this ensemble episode who have very little to say. They're sort of just there, sort of and this idea of the loads of spacesuits, which is very, very cool. And then just it all falling apart. Amazing. Interestingly, after that upvote, one of the leaders then deliberately kills the other, and it's that real moment that it really clicks with the Doctor. It's like, obviously it's clicked with the Doctor's highly intelligent, but there's that real moment of, look at the horror, look at what we have turned into, you've all done this to each other, and they're all trying to justify it, and they're all panicking slightly, and they realise there is just about no way out, until there is a way out. It's Mercury Mine, and in a classic, clever Doctor Who turnaround, they end up sorting things out, which is, just, really, really clever writing there. As you'd expect. Again, it's just a well-thought-out, tight little story, and it's great from that perspective. Then there is a great sequence in which they're getting back to the ship. They have to make a very quick dash, and that sense of panic is only furthered by Rose in this scene, because she's not always been fairly communicated with. Obviously, there's that great concept of the tap on the chest thing, and you can see what people are saying, but people aren't always looking at her, and that means that she cruelly gets sort of left out of, not always deliberately, but sometimes gets left out of plans, and that was, I thought her panic really shone through really well in this sequence, and the panic of everyone, but the additional terror of not, especially since she is the one with it on her back. It's not her left, but sort of around her. I thought that was, great stuff. Then they make it onto the ship, and they realise it has made it with them. Uh-oh. Of course it has. And that was just another excellent way of leveling up this episode. Once again, the stakes, the tension just keeps going, and it is really edge of your seat stuff that is, I really, really like. Then the ultimate sacrifice, of course, does have to be made. And there's a little flashback scene, and the stuff involving the commander is really interesting because it certainly puts her as a character back on track and back into the favour of the viewer, which I think is a really interesting thing. And the fact that she is acting for all the right reasons, but the ways in which they've acted have led things throughout the episode to degrade slightly. So I think that's, once again, more really interesting exploration going on there. Then, after she makes her sacrifice, there's a very interesting sequence in there. Sorry, I know I'm rambling, but I have no script this week. I've been very busy, so I'm sort of going off the top of my head. There's some bit in which Belinda's sort of shot through the chest and it barely misses her heart. Because it's established that Belinda has it. So then the other one takes it, and then that's where she makes her grand sacrifice. And it's what? Sorry, what? And it's all stacked really nicely so that it works and makes sense as you're watching the episode, but what? Yeah. Okay. But hey, it's a small issue with a really good episode. And then they make it off. They're safe, and there's that end discussion of need to get back to our serialized story, which I really, really like. So glad they're doing that once again. And nobody knows what humanity is, Doctor. Oh no, that's a problem. And just that's a really good way of setting things up for next episode, keeping that constant streamline going through. Mrs. Flood taking another really central position there, almost like Susan Triad. I think that's really interesting. Just another great way of keeping things really serialized and keeping that constant through line going. Very, very nice stuff. Then, to close things off, there's a classic little Doctor Who stinger that nobody quite understands, a bit like 73 Yards, and we will never be given an explanation for. We just know that's how it is. And that's how it always will be. But it has somehow survived. The midnight thing has survived. And to be honest, I don't know how to feel about that. It does make it seem slightly as if the whole thing, and obviously it does mean that the whole thing was in vain. It was all pointless, and there's a real horrific realization at the end, and at the end there, and it's a classic stinger. I'm not really sure how I feel about that yet. It sort of feels slightly, it's still out there, it's all pointless, but there is an excellent horror in that. The Midnight Beast is so keen to survive, and so keen to survive in the horrific ways in which it does, and inflict that terror upon everyone else. A cheery note to end up our discussion of this episode on. All in all, I'd give this episode a really solid 8 out of 10. I probably would have given it a bit lower, actually, just after watching the episode, but it's one of those ones where it's not a particularly enjoyable watch. A bit like Boom, there's lots of great stuff in there, but it's not as immediately fun as something like Lux, where I can obviously go, this is all stuff I love. It's deep, thought-provoking TV in a weird way. And for that reason, I probably would rate it a little bit lower after this. But after going through all the factors, I have to say, I really, really like it. Still can't believe they chose to do a sequel to Midnight. That really surprises me. I was not expecting that. I said it wasn't on my bingo card. I don't actually have a bingo card, but definitely would in no way have been something I'd expected. But hey, we all love a David Tennant connection, don't we? So that was good. But I'd say my disappointment regarding this episode, and there's not much, but the fact that I felt sort of okay-ish, sort of 7 out of 10 this episode before I properly discussed it, was the fact that Midnight is a 10 out of 10 episode. It is amazing, and I felt like this episode didn't quite do the concept as much justice as the original Midnight did, but it's such a high bar to be setting that I'm willing to let that go. That is it though for this episode of Snack Breaks, the new Whovian. Thank you very much for listening. We will probably not have an episode 4 discussion coming out close-ish to the episode. It will probably be releasing, you'll probably get, fingers crossed, about 2 videos in 2 weeks' time as opposed to 1 a week. So episode 4 and episode 5 reviews will probably be dropped close enough to each other because next 2 weeks are super busy for me. And yeah, just for that reason, I'm probably not going to be able to review episode 4. I will release a community post, hopefully. But yeah, that'll be about it. Thank you very much for listening, though. I've been Ben Go Blue. This has been the New Whovian. This is Snack Break Podcast, Hung Cap Hour production. See you soon. Stay safe. Bye.